There are a lot of different invasives. The primary one that we've been working on for many years is called Eurasian water milfoil. You'll see that always EWM.
We care about invasive species because we do care about our environment, and we live here, at least I live here, because I enjoy the outdoors and I enjoy lakes, and I would like to see and keep all these beautiful things on these lakes for not just me, but for future generations too.
Back in the early 2000s, Eurasian water milfoil was first discovered in Watersmeet on Clearwater Lake. Before that, it had been mainly a problem down in southern Wisconsin, and then eventually worked its way north. There's over 300 lakes in Watersmeet Township, and it's a huge source of revenue for both the township and the county for taxing on waterfront properties. And we know from past experience in lakes that have been impacted by invasive species down south that typically home values would depreciate by as much as 35% once invasive species had taken over a lake.
In some instances, it can cause recreational and use impairments. Ecologically, they have been known to outcompete other native beneficial species.
If we could establish ourselves as a nonprofit organization with tax deductibility for donations, that would open us up to grants from various private foundations and government agencies outside of the township or the state.
By the time we got into the beginning of 2007, we were sitting with a 501c3. By the middle of that year, we had between 35 and 40 people that were interested and were willing to pay us dues. Nobody else around the area was doing it, so we were surprised the number of people that were concerned with what was happening with the waterways.
When we decided to become a nonprofit and to refile as a private entity, we were looking to get buy-in from as many different lake associations as we could, and to let the public know, maybe through the name, that the problem was pretty widespread, but that there were a lot of people interested in attacking it. So the long, convoluted name of Invasive Species Control Coalition of Watersmeet. But after a couple of years, that people kept asking, what does ISCCW stand for? So we came up with a shorter nickname for it called Watersmeet Lakeguards, which more people could identify with. So now we're registered as a nonprofit under the ISCCW name, but we're more commonly called locally as the Watersmeet Lakeguards.
We made up a contract between ISCCW and the township for ISCCW to be the caretaker for the waterways in terms of invasive species for the township, and the township would back us with a stipend of money. And they've been doing that. The contract right now is a 2-year revolving contract. It gets picked up every year, and every year the township comes up with some seed money for us.
We have 4 power washers, and they're under 4,000 psi of water, and they're heated with a diesel heater. So the water comes out at almost steam, about 180 degrees. And that kills any animal life that happened to be on the boat. Zebra mussels, spiny water flea, that sort of thing. And then the power washer of the water itself removes milfoil traces and anything that's on the boat pretty much. Along with the washing, we have the operators of the power washers are also educators. So they reach the boaters, they tell what we do, they tell them the dangers of infecting lakes with invasive species spreading from one lake to another. So that's almost as important as the washing aspect of it.
When we first started, a part of our big challenge was just educating the public, because invasive species were a relatively new problem in the Upper Peninsula and northern Wisconsin. We found if you reach out to the children, it was a good way to get a buy-in of families, and we weren't just speaking to the children, but we were trying to speak to their parents through the children.
We are responsible for kind of putting together an annual program looking at different lakes in the township for aquatic invasive species. A lot of what we do is early detection work. So the earlier we can detect something, the earlier we can propose management. Some of what we do is kind of pre- and post-treatment monitoring on lakes that are managing for invasives. So whether a lake group's very active in management or not, we'll come in and monitor over the long term. What is the plant community doing? What is the invasive species doing in that water body?
We typically do a lot of zigzagging when we look for milfoil. That is, you pick out an object on shore and you go toward that, and then you turn and you come out and you watch your locator so you know when the weed growth stops. Turn again, back and forth, zigzagging all the way. If you spot a plant down in the water, we developed what you call a snagger. It's simply a bottle brush cleaner. Bend it, little duct tape on the end of a sapling. Sometimes you have to take a sample of it, so you just dip down and break it off. If it happens to be Eurasian, then we developed a buoy system. And all the milfoil watchers, if they throw one of these out, they all know to throw it to the deep side of the plant about 5 feet away so the line doesn't get tangled up with the plant.
We need active volunteers. We need people who are willing to get out, get their feet wet, get their hands dirty, and do the job. So our memberships are probably the best members you could ask for. They're really caring members.
We were probably the first consolidated group. Most of the lakes up here, the larger lakes particularly, had lake associations, but they were working by themselves. If they had a problem, they had to try to deal with it, maybe try to get some help from the state or from the DNR. We became relatively successful and were able to attend statewide lake association meetings in the springtime and get our message out of the successes that we had, that sort of spurred on some follow-on groups to form associations in their areas. So we've become probably one of our greatest accomplishments outside of what we've been able to do in Watersmeet is the fact that we've encouraged other groups to kind of follow our model and take a similar tack to deal with the problems in their areas.